Hello everyone, Action Johnny here, back after what seems like an eternity. And you could be forgiven for thinking that, because it has been a while since I've made a video, or indeed even made my YouTube presence known. But here we are, we're back. And with something a little different than what I was last pushing. So I've got a few things to talk about today. Um, Generally the state of the meta, some things going forward that have cropped up, and just just my thoughts on what I kind of want to be playing until the second cycle rolls out, at least. So we've just had Disciples of the Void drop, the Phoenix Clan pack, and that's shaken things up a bit, as everyone predicted that it would. Phoenix now have a lot of good decks, and I'm pretty sure we've only really seen the top of the iceberg on those. Already we have people like Chris Potorf, aka Frotop, making some cool ideas. With his Tadaka Tetsubo hands and his much nastier, hyper efficient Phoenix Dragon build. And I've no doubt there are some other great builders out there as well, doing all kinds of nasty stuff with Phoenix. But I'm not really a Phoenix player. I'm not really the kind of guy that likes to jump on the bandwagon either. As cool as some of those new Phoenix cards do look, I don't think I'll be straying over to play Fire Chickens anytime soon. So for me, the joys of the pack really come in looking at either what cards the other clans got, or what cards from the that Phoenix got we can use in other clans. So what can we splash basically? And I was looking at the cards in the pack, and a lot of cool spells. I thought, a lot of these are kind of niche, or they're very influence expensive. I think there was another 3 influence cards introduced in the pack, which were Karmic Twist and Clarity of Purpose, which both seem very strong. Karmic Twist is stronger, obviously, with that Embrace the Void combo, which not everyone can do, because not everyone has access to Shigenjas for Embrace the Void. Clarity of Purpose is just very, very strong in general. Any sort of non-bow stand event in this game, it just seems to be strong. But, everyone was already looking at the spells. It was all this, the synergy of those is kind of obvious. But I was looking at some other stuff in the cards, specifically the roll card actually support the Phoenix. And what that offers. So the downside of support of the Phoenix is you lose access to Keeper and Seeker cards. So if you're a Seeker deck, you don't get your Pathfinder's Blades and your double provinces of any element or whatever. And if you're a Keeper deck, you don't get those handy monks, which we all love. And that's quite a big hit to take. So if you're going to be running support of the Phoenix, you probably want to be getting something really critical to the success of your deck out of it, rather than just, putting in good Phoenix cards, which may or may not have any kind of existing synergy with what it is you're trying to build. So yeah, I was interested in, what we could be using that extra influence for. And out of all of the cards in the pack, this little fellow right here, the Path of Man, it really interested me. It's a very high influence card for a start. It's a whopping 4 bamboo, unprecedented in the game thus far. And it costs absolutely nothing, and the effect seems strong, but not strong in like an obvious, flashy display of power, clarity of purpose kind of strong. Strong in like a much more sort of subtle way. So it's basically you win a challenge by 5 or a conflict by 5, and you get 2 fate, which is great, really. I know there are some people who are just gonna be like, Well, what's the point of that? You know, Fate's easy enough to get. You can get it from rings. You can, for your Seeker, you're not really wanting for Fate. You know, because you get it when your provinces of your element are revealed. You know, why would you waste your influence splashing that? Um, and you know, there's some valid criticism there. You know, like a lot of clans will struggle to really win a conflict by five. I mean, there are win by five cards already in the game that don't see any play, like Fallen in Battle, for instance. Um, you know, it's tough. It's tough winning by five for a lot of factions. The only ones off the top of my head I immediately thought, oh, well, they're going to have an easy time triggering this card were potentially Dragon. But, you know, Dragon's deck is so strong. The Dragon Crab deck is so refined and so strong at this point that, you know, I have a difficult time imagining most competitive Dragon players running support of the Phoenix in a competitive event when they've already got their one deck to rule them all. And the only other sort of clan I thought that could really sort of leverage this effect were Lion, because Lion like to go all in anyway. They've got a very all in play style, you know. It's honest. You just focus on winning your one challenge. You win it by a lot. You try and get the break, and you go from there. Really. Um, but I thought, you know, actually, this card in Lion is really very good. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about why I think that is. So Lion at the minute is kind of suffering in the current meta. I'd say they're probably the second least powerful faction in the game right now, right after Unicorn being the worst, obviously. I think the reason for that is military-based clans are getting pretty heavily punished right now. You know, there's so many. The whole issue of strong political actions being in the game, while the sort of military actions are less so. Still very much a thing, you know. For shame, policy debate everywhere. You know, just on top of that, the political clans like Crane, Scorpion, and Phoenix, you know, they've got strong cards and strong builds at this point. You know, Crane as a Yoshi Storm running Scorpion Splash with, you know, Fate Worse Than Death and calling in favors, or, you know, even just still the good old reliable Dragon Splash. It has good matchups against Phoenix and Scorpion as well. Scorpion, I don't need to explain why they're strong. They've won the last two KTs pretty seamlessly. And Phoenix have just had a huge injection of really powerful cards. And, you know, while it may take builders a while to figure out the one true build there, or, you know, multiple true builds, they're very, very strong at the minute just because they've got a lot more options than anyone else. So, yeah, Lion are really suffering because their one sort of strategy, as it were, is to get a load of weenies on the board, try and break, try and get For Greater Glory to go off, and allow them to stick about in the game. So they sort of gain momentum as the game progresses, you know? Which is all well and good on paper, but it doesn't actually work at the minute because Policy Debate is a card. You know, there's cancels everywhere. There's slightly less since the Phoenix pack came out because a few of them have moved away from censure. But, you know, Crane are very strong, Scorpion are very strong, everyone's still running their edicts and their voices of honour. And there's still a couple of censures about. So it's very hard to utilise your strategy of relying on Greater Glory to maintain your board presence. And the other thing that really sucks for Lion is they are crap at defending. Now, I'm a crab player, you know this. Obviously, if you watch my channel, you've seen my videos. I like to play crab. Coming from a very defensive orientated clan to Lion was a little frustrating for me because, you know, they just had no real capabilities in that area. But, you know, I got a friend, Darren Hazelden. You probably know him from various Facebook groups and as the co-host of Troll5R. He's very much an advocate for, I guess, with high rolling clans, he likes to play Crane. Um, Fuck defending, you know? It's more like racing them to the finish sort of style. Um, which is great, but if you're going to do that, you need some sort of mechanism to really swing the balance of power from letting every big conflict you need to defend go undefended. So, yeah, Lion problems. What are they? Crap defenders. Very hard to maintain board presence for their big swarm armies because it's if you buy every 2 cost with a fate on it, it starts getting very expensive very quickly. Obviously they're very susceptible to assassination, especially early on. And yeah, all it takes is just one turn where your board presence finally expires, all your characters go, and then you're kind of screwed if you don't have an economy lead. The other issue, of course, is not being able to punish your opponents for not defending. So, looking at support of the Phoenix, what do we get from that for Lion? We get 2 cards that really help push our tactic, which is building tempo and building momentum, and we get a card that punishes our opponents for when we decide not to defend and let conflicts go past unopposed with display of power, which I don't think I need to discuss at this point. So, what else did Lion get from the Phoenix pack? They got this character here, Ikoma Sanuri, who is fantastic. Why do we like Ikoma Sanuri? First of all, she's cheap. She costs 2. She's actually a little bit comparable to the new Phoenix 2-coster Tetsu, who gets stat bumps with every spell you cost. She works in a similar sort of way. The other thing, of course, is she's unique, which is great for Lion, because they want characters that they can dupe for free, that get that staying power. And yeah, of course, her action is very strong and synergizes perfectly with the rest of the Lion deck, where you traditionally run a lot of small Bushis. So she can really ramp up your army pretty quickly. She's a great force multiplier. So yeah, she helps Lion's problems slightly as well, with the board not sticking around. And yeah, so what did I want to do? I wanted to create a deck which specialized in a sort of swarm tactics. I'm not interested in big guy Lion. I don't think they can do that as well as the other clans. Their strength is in numbers, right? And they even have this card called Strength in Numbers. And it's pretty telling of what tactics you should be using to play them. So I went all in on that idea. If you have a look at the stats of the deck here, I've got up on Bushi Builder, you can see that I am at a whopping 14 2-cost cards in my dynasty. I've got another 6 1-costers. So half of my dynasty deck costs 2 fate or below, which is great. In my conflict deck is also insanely cheap. I've got 27 0-cost cards, 8 1-cost cards, and then the 2 displays of power and the 3 goblin sneaks in filling out my 2-cost section. So really, there is all this deck is doing. It's just trying to win challenges by 5. It's trying to get the trigger off on Path of Man. So early on, we can start getting this fate lead that we want, and that we actually need as well, because ideal flop for us turn 1 is going to be a Matsu Berserker or the other 1-cost character, which is the gifted. No, it's not the gifted tactician. God, what is it? The prodigy. There it is. Get one of those and a couple of 2-drops. Either of the unique ones. Yeah, the unique ones are okay early on. They tend to get assassinated, but basically you just want low-cost characters to start pumping out onto the board. And we're going to try everything we can in our game plan to get a fate advantage on our opponent. So, Goblins are great turn 1 because that is the literal personification of fate advantage in a card. We spend 2, we steal 1 for our opponent, and it keeps our Goblin around for a turn. That can really screw up people's plans, especially Phoenix. You know, they think they've got two fate for display of power turn 1. No, you don't. You get the Goblin Sneak coming and nicking it, which is great. Yeah, we ideally obviously want to be getting the pass first fate, but that's very difficult to do as Lion because very rarely we'll be passing first because of things like, well, just wanting to buy lots of characters, and if we've got a staging grounds, then we're going to be using that action probably in Dynasty phase as well. But the main thing is just sort of outvaluing our opponents. And yeah, hopefully with 2 cost uniques. So we've got obviously the new one, Sonari here, and we've got Toshiro, who isn't the best character, admittedly, but you know, he's just, for all intents and purposes, another 2/1 Bushi, so he synergizes with the rest of the deck. His action isn't terrible. It does mean that you can't break the province, but he also can single-handedly trigger Path of Ban on his own, so that's kind of handy. And also you don't need to use his action. And he has the advantage of sticking around through being a unique character, where we can draw dupes and keep him around. So yeah, all we're trying to do is actually just kind of do the standard Lion tactic of all in on the military, but just with actually the economy and the means to support our board going forward. You know, the great thing about the conflict deck in this deck is it's absolutely full of low-cost events. Absolutely chock full. Our opponent only has 3 cancels, and assuming we're not in an open list format, you know, there's going to be a lot of stuff thrown at them to cancel, really, you know. I haven't even had a display of power cancelled in this deck yet, because usually it's something like a ready for battle, or a greater glory, or a charge, or, you know, some sort of one with the military stat pumps. Even the strength in numbers. You know, like Path of Man is rarely even cancelled, you know. And that's a mistake, because Path of Man is a real tempo swinging card. You know, 2 Fate doesn't sound like a lot, but it's huge, you know. And also, there's no limit on how many times in a conflict you can trigger this. So, if you win by 5 and you have 2 or 3 copies in hand, you can get 4/6 Fate advantage straight away. And you know, that means that your next flop, if you flop well, you're going to have a huge amount of extra value on the board compared to your opponent. Especially, you know, compounded by cards like Display of Power to take away their advantages, or Goblin Sneak to take away their resources. You know, it can get pretty silly pretty quickly how lopsided it can be. And you know, Lord forbid you should actually manage to trigger a Greater Glory, because if that happens and we've got our little swarm on the go, it's pretty much game over, really. Yeah. I've just realised I don't have the provinces on this build. Oh, sorry, on this page. But that's fine, we'll go over to the other build. In terms of the Dynasty deck, other characters that sort of synergize well. Obviously, Totori, need no explanation there. He's a great charge target, and double ring effects are just nasty. We have shunned Satoshi in this build. I like Satoshi. He's a great character, especially for Crab. I feel he's kind of a bit of a tempo hit in Lion, and that's sort of slightly outweighed by his ability to mill for keepers. I know he also puts stuff in the discard pile for the Spirit Caller, but you know, that happens naturally over the course of the game. Anyway, it just takes a little longer without him. But yeah, without the keepers, I think he's less good, and we're not really interested in running any other Imperial cards in this deck other than the Palace. So I don't know. I didn't go with him here. I went with EG instead, who actually helps our strategy. EG is, you know, you can buy EG with no fate, it kind of sucks, but he does sort of shut down a political conflict for your opponent, or even your own political conflicts. You know, he combos pretty well with Deathseeker, who you like to poke political with. And, you know, he can fish out great characters from your discard pile, put them straight into play, and that helps you with your big military push as well. So, yeah, I'm testing EG at the minute. He's he's pretty good, especially if you see him mid-game. Like, early game, he's not amazing because you want to be seeing your 2-cost military dudes. But mid-game, he's pretty great. I've got one of a cheeky Matsu Biona because she's a sticky character. Easy peasy. She triggers really easily in this deck off charge, which is fantastic. I did originally not have Yujiaki in there because I wasn't sure like how reliable the deck would be at gaining favor, and I don't really have any favor tech apart from the one lucky Imperial Palace. But you know, his blowout potential is so huge that it's worth just having a one of in there as well. You know, you charge, you get your thingy off where you flip 2 cards and discard the favor and bring in more guys. It can get real ugly quickly for your opponent. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, everything else is a pretty fairly standard line good stuff. All of the military bumps, you know, we definitely want to be winning military. So 3 legions, 3 Banzais, 3 Way of the Lions, charge. You know, I want to be winning that military by 5 every time. And it's very doable, this deck. So on the defensive side of things, we have our provinces, which we're going to have Sholtry through. Obviously, like, the one downside of Support of the Phoenix is you can't run Feast of Famine, because that is a fire roll only card, and we've given up our role here to have the Support of the Phoenix. So our provinces are a little less scary than the standard Lion build, but by still no means, you know, anything to shrug at. So generally speaking, at the minute, I'm just testing with Manicured Garden on my stronghold, and it's not an optimal choice. You know, no one balks in fear when they attack Manicured Garden, but the idea is I get to their stronghold before they get to mine, and I win the game. You know, if you only get to your stronghold, then something's probably gone wrong with the deck, you know? Because these 4 in the row, Meditations, Public Forum, Shameful Display, and the Art of War, are a pain in the ass. So Meditations early, if they flip Meditations early and they're attacking with a 2-cost character, sorry, a 2 fated character, and you've got Meditations out, so they flip Meditations to that character, and you have Display of Power in hand. You can strip 2 fate off them if they decide to Void Ring that. That's something that can happen. So yeah, obviously Meditations is good for us as well because it takes away from their board presence while, you know, helping out. Well, it doesn't help ours, but, you know, anything to basically make them less sticky while we try and enact our tactic of staying sticky is great. Public Forum is great because really the only clan that's running Pathfinder Blade, which makes it a lot worse, is Dragon. I know you get some Scorpion builds that have the Pathfinder Blade, but they're not as popular as Scorpion Dragon. So Public Forum is just something they can bounce off. Really, what we're using Public Forum for is to buy time. It's another break they have to do to get to our stronghold. It has the downside of it's slightly farmable, which is annoying, but, you know, they've got to get those 2 breaks. So they want to farm rings. They're going to really have some nasty surprises in this deck if they do that. Shameful Display is the best province in the game. Don't need to go into that. Very good. You know, if they attack political at Shameful and you've got a nice political defender out, it's great. EG and Shameful Display are just... Whew, that is a great combo there. He becomes a bit of a monster if you get EG out and you have Shameful triggered. And then the Art of War, which your opponent doesn't really want to break, but often will. It's kind of like ripping off a band-aid, that card. But that's great because it gives us card advantage. generally most of the time. 3 cards for nothing is very good. And then, the rest of the conflict deck, fairly explanatory, just a couple of neutral attachments there. So, yeah, the other card that I haven't spoken massively, I've spoken quite a lot about Path of Man. Obviously, display of power is a massive part of our tactic here. If we go all in on a military and we break, and the opponent's like, well, screw it, I'm only going to, slightly defend, or I'm going to, make sure I've got guys standing to swing back so I can get the ring I want, they've got a really nasty surprise in the form of display of power there. Especially as you can't policy debate display of power out on the conflict you're attacking. So public forum is actually less of a liability when we're running display of power, because we can let that go unopposed. We can let that conflict attacking public forum go unopposed, and we can take away the best ring that we need. We've only got 2 copies of it here, so you've got to choose wisely when you use it. But if there's some ring effect that's absolutely clutch for your opponent, like maybe they need, maybe it's crab and they need to grab the earth ring to trigger, to get their keepers out, or it's void, or they've gone void and they've hit meditations and they've got a character with multiple fate on, or it's fire and you've got a big glory guy out, it's just it can just swing games, and the combination of our sort of overwhelming military waves of attack and display of power to really punish the opponent from doing anything back, it can create a lopsided game state pretty quickly. I mean, all we're trying to do on our tactics is gain an early lead and then keep it as possible, hence the deck name, push the tempo. Shout out to any Fatboy Slim fans out there. Yeah, and that's really it. I guess the last thing I can talk about is what we're losing from the Keeper of Fire role and how that affects the deck. We're not losing a huge amount. The biggest loss, in my opinion, is Feast of Famine. That card is broken. This is pretty well agreed on by most top players of the game now. So while obviously it sucks to lose such a powerful broken card, it's not the be-all end-all. It's just 1 province. You do miss it, but Meditations is almost as good. The other huge thing we lose is the Keepers. Keepers are less good in line than they are in Crab, I feel. They don't have Bushi trait. They are recurable. You can use them with Legion of One, but they don't synergize with the rest of the deck, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like they don't add as much to line as they do for Crab, where you really want all your guys that are attacking having that Bushi trait so you can enable for greater glory. The Keepers are fine for defending, that's cool, but we've got a couple of slightly more defensive characters in this build anyway. Like Deathseeker is good to poke politically, but also great if you know you're going to lose on defense. EG's a great defender when he's honoured. So we got, and then this guy as well, the Prodigy is also great. So our sort of political, our political wing here are kind of our defenders. So yeah, it's not a huge deal to use the Keepers. Obviously they're free characters, which is always nice, but they also take up Dynasty slots that could be spent elsewhere. I mean, if you look at the sheer ratio, or the sheer density, I guess is the correct word I'm looking for, of good 2-cost characters that all do something relevant to the deck here, it's actually quite overwhelming, really. You've got card draw guy, you've got flip a dude guy. Yeah, it's good. It's lit shit here, basically. Cards I've excluded from this build that I'm not particularly interested in running. Let's just go over to Bushi Builder, and we'll have a look at what I've excluded from the Lion Dynasty. Bear with me 2 seconds. Right. So, Beastmaster Matriarch is crap, so no explanation needed there. Blackable Magistrate is a very strong card, but I'm just not crazy about loads and loads of expensive cards in Lion, and she's only great really when you've got lots of honoured guys as well. So she sort of works better in the Keeper of Fire, double firing Totori sort of style of play. And if you've got Satoshi as well, you can fish her out. So I don't know. I don't think she goes in this deck. Basically, you've got Miwaku Kabi Guard. I just don't like this card. I don't like it. Yeah, it's a 1-drop. Yeah, it's a 1/0. But it's a weak card. You need to win to ensure its pride goes off, otherwise it's just a fucking liability. But of course his stats are in no way conducive to you winning. A 1/0 is bad. It's bad. Even as just a cheap filler, it's bad, Like I would rather run a much better impactful 2-coster and pay the extra fate for something that's good than run the Miwaku Kabi Guard that doesn't really do anything. Obstinate Recruit is a good card, but we want to be drawing lots of cards. We, especially early game, we're probably gonna have a couple of bid 5 turns just to make sure we see the cards we need in our hand. And the fact that he basically disappears the second that you drop below your opponent in honor is not great, especially when we're trying to stay on the board. So that's why he didn't make the cut. Steadfast Samurai is slightly better than the Miwaku Kabi Guard in my opinion, but it's still not really a remarkable card. And yeah, when he's, both this guy and the Obstinate Recruit, they kind of want you to be building towards being more honourable than your opponent at all times. And yeah, I don't know, it's not realistic for this deck. And Venerable Historian, yeah, we don't need her. She's just not part of it. So yeah, that's why I've excluded those guys. Anyway, you've listened to me prattle on long enough. Oh yeah, wait, no, there's one last thing I wanted to talk about, and that is you've probably at some point seen some rumors of a restricted list. I'm on Discord. There's been some rumblings. There's been some chatter on there of a potential restricted list that could be coming out very soon. There's also been a topic on Card Game DB discussing this chatter. And if we have a look here, we can see from this post that the supposed list, the rumoured list, is Policy Debate, Fury, Calling in Favours, Edict, Charge, Iron Mine for Greater Glory Against the Waves, and Pathfinder's Blade. So, yeah, that actually is kind of good news for Lion if that turns out to be true. Because we've only got 2 cards on the list, Charge and For Greater Glory. And while Charge is a fantastic card, I think we're taking For Greater Glory here. Because even though buying 2 costers is always worse than charging them in for 1 cost, it's not really breaking the bank for us. We are looking for our low-cost characters, and we're looking to get them, fated up early. And the Greater Glory is perfect for that. Yeah, I just think we definitely want to keep For Greater Glory, especially if cards like Policy Debate are going to fall out the meta because they're now restricted. I think Charge will still be around. That'll probably be one of the more popular choices from the restricted list, but obviously if it does turn out to be true, Crab will probably be running Iron Mine. I can't see Dragon running Charge over Fury. Scorpion will probably stop running Charge because they've already got 2 of their best cards on the list anyway. I imagine Phoenix will go with Against the Waves. So I really do feel like even though Lion lose Charge, or would lose Charge if they go for Greater Glory, it seems like most other clans will as well, except maybe Unicorn and potentially Crane. But even then, Crane probably want to go Policy Debate on that list. So yeah, if that restricted list does end up being true, then this deck gets even better because A, there's going to be less cancels in the meta because Forward Edict is now restricted. Policy Debate will drop out because really I can't imagine people choosing Policy Debate over some of those other cards. And on the whole, this deck gets much better. If that restricted list does indeed come to pass, I could see us replacing charge with some slightly more experimental stuff. I'm actually tempted to try Fallen in battle in this build again, just because if we're trying to win by 5, to trigger Path of Man, we might as well stick the other win by 5 card in there. And it could be a really nasty surprise, you know. People like to defend with their big fated up military guys to try and stop the Greater Glory. You know, let's say you've got a Tadaka, if you're Phoenix. You know, he's got a nice big 5 military stat, which they didn't have before. You know, they like to fate up Tadaka because he's a game-winning character, that guy. But it's still relatively easy to beat Phoenix by 5 and trigger Path of Man. And if you do that, you could then feasibly trigger Fallen in battle and kill their Tadaka, which is great. So yeah, I'll probably mess around with that a bit if that post-restricted list environment comes to fruition. But yeah, anyway, enough chat. Let's look at playing some games with this baby. Join me in a minute.